the bombing itself. So there have been 2 bombings of in the airport area of Afghanistan in Kabul, and the results have been pretty striking. So I thought we'd go through this in some kind of chronological order. So the first thing to mention is, of course, the warnings beforehand. So this is a video of British intelligence warning about a threat from Islamic State Khorasan, I don't know how you say it, which is imminent and credible and lethal to the airport itself. So everyone told them, the foreigners in the region, get out of the airport, don't be there. And that was the threat. So the reporters kept asking Biden at these press conferences he kept trying to give. I'm saying trying because he turned up, speak for like 15 minutes, and then be like, bye-bye, see you tomorrow.
But what worse, he would turn up literally hours late.
Yeah, or just cancel them like the State Department did yesterday. So if we go to the next one, you can see this, in which
he would refuse to take questions as well.
A reporter shouted out because he refused to take questions. What about ISIS and their threat that Americans face now, in reference to the reports of the threat at the airbase? And Biden just walked off because no questions, folks. This also became a meme. So if we go to the next one, just every press conference, he's just walking off.
Yeah.
Just not interested.
There were loads of really important questions that journalists would actually shout at him, and he would just ignore them and walk off.
I mean, at the worst of time, I will admit that journalists shouting things at press conferences come off silly, but when it's this serious and he takes 0 questions...
Annoyingly, the journalists are actually shouting pertinent questions as well. You know, if they were shouting stupid questions like they shouted Trump...
What's your favourite ice cream?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it would have been fine, but Joe Biden actually needed to answer these questions, and he didn't. Yeah.
So we get the next one. This has also become a meme. So this is the portrait of the... Was it officially the 46th president of the United States? Yeah, fitting. So we go to the next one on this. The Taliban has issued a deadline to the United States to withdraw by the 31st of August, and the US officials are saying they're going to keep to that Taliban deadline because that's how the reins of power have gotten.
Yep. The Taliban tell the Americans what to do and not the other way around.
So the Americans have gone to calling the Taliban Afghan partners. So we go to the next link. You have General Frank McKenzie, commander of the US Central Command, and Rear Admiral Peter Vasily, head of the US forces on the ground in Afghanistan, now refer to the Taliban as our Afghan partners.
That's incredible. Like, the Taliban are a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
From the perspective of the Americans. And this just, honestly, it just reminds me, I feel like I'm getting dispatches from King Darius during the Macedonian invasion, describing, our Macedonian partners have taken administration of Egypt. It's like, yeah, well, that means they've conquered it. They've defeated you, conquered it, and then they're coming for more.
Macedonian partners.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a bizarre way of trying to normalize what's a terrorist group taking over a country.
But there is a reason for this, of course, is that there is no one else in Afghanistan running the place. It is just the Taliban. So at this point, if you're going to work with anyone, you've got one option.
Yeah, well, that's because, what was the name of the president who fled to the UAE?
Can't even remember.
Yeah, exactly. He just took like $100 million in a suitcase and fled. Great.
There's that. There is some touching news from the Taliban. Taliban fighters in the UK embassy have vowed to protect any portraits of the Queen from looters. I mean, thanks, lads.
They're shooting people in the streets, but they're not going to desecrate an image of the Queen.
I mean, I'm British, so I'll take that as a compliment. But, of course, this might also have a bit of a dodgy aspect that apparently we left a bunch of documents for them to find in the embassy. So we go to the next one. The British embassy left details of Afghan staff for the Taliban to find. So apparently in the embassy, the evacuation was so fast that people didn't think to burn all the documents with a list of, our previous Afghan friends. So the Taliban have a bunch of them now. And in return, they're not going to destroy the portraits of the Queen, I guess.
And there have been reports that they've been going around killing people who worked with the American administration. So
I mean, they said they would do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they said they. Well, no, they said they wouldn't. They wouldn't take reprisals.
Oh, they said they would, and then they took over and they said we're totally not going to take reprisals. And then loads of reports of all these guys I met in Afghanistan are all dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't call them anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, if I was going to put my money on it, I'm suggesting that these very sane, austere religious scholars. I mean, look at that guy's eyes. Jesus Christ, he looks intense. I'm guessing these austere religious scholars probably are shooting their enemies.
Yep. There's also the fact that, we may have goofed here a little bit with the massive evacuation you have to do on short notice, thanks to the Americans, because they're the ones who decide NATO foreign policy.
Well, we say the Americans, but it seems to have been Biden or his
specifically
cabal,
Biden, of course, but from a foreigner perspective.
Of course, yeah.
So,
I don't want all Americans to feel blamed for what's happened here, because I don't think it was your fault.
No, of course
not only do I not think you elected Biden, but I also think that he made this decision unilaterally.
So the US officials from Biden's regime apparently have given the Taliban a list of American citizens, green card holders, and Afghan allies to grant entry to the militant-controlled outer perimeter of the city's airport.
That's amazing. That's actually amazing. That's the worst thing you could have done for these people. You've just given the Taliban a kill list.
I mean, on a very charitable interpretation, I can understand the American citizens or green card holder types,
Sure.
because we have the instance of the Mad Lad Miles,
Yep.
for example, who stated that
Yep.
he and his group of various nationalities were escorted to the airport by Taliban. Taliban took them and made sure they were safe because they wanted to just get rid of the foreigners
Yeah.
so they can get back to being the Taliban. And so I get that part, but to give them a list of names of Afghan allies, I mean, the people they are trying to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people who, I mean, if you take the Taliban's perspective, you've just succeeded in conquering a very chaotic country. The first thing you're going to want to do is absolutely purge those people who worked with the invaders.
Yeah, so of course
No question.
the airport is the thing to bomb if you're an Islamist militant who wants to kill a bunch of Americans or people trying to flee Afghanistan. So we go to the next one. This is just some footage of the scenes that were outside. So you can see people standing in the sewage there around the entire airport who are pleading to get in. As Sky News reported, many of them have no right, but that doesn't seem to matter because this is just an S show, again, as we've created. And one of the bombs went off in a site exactly like this. So we're not going to play the footage, but if you want to imagine what happened, just, blow up a bomb here. And yeah, I mean, the number of people.
Imagine the terror and chaos.
Yeah, so that's where one of the bombs went off. So we go to the BBC article on this. They have the details of what happened. So at least 90 people have been killed and 150 others wounded. A senior health official in Kabul told the BBC. This number keeps going up and up because they are counting the bodies. The Pentagon has confirmed that at least 13 US service personnel were among those killed. So 13 Americans dead who were trying to protect the base. The bombings came hours after Western governments had warned their citizens to stay away from the airport because of an imminent threat of an attack by ISK, Islamic State, Khorasan, how do you say it? The Afghanistan branch of the Islamic State group. The first explosion happened around 6 p.m. local time, close to the Baron Hotel near the airport's inner perimeter. The hotel was being used by British officials to process Afghans hoping to travel to the UK. Sorry, outer perimeter. So there's one bomb that went off right next to the entrance, and there's one that went off near to a hotel where the British are trying to process people who we want or don't want. Don't know how well that's going, but... So the US official said that at least one attacker had been wearing an explosive vest, so one of them was a suicide bomber. So there's no getting him back. There's no arresting him. He's up in paradise now, as they would say. According to one account, one attacker fired into a crowd of people, although reports also said that the Taliban guards had fired into the air. I presume that's because I've seen this with the Afghan army as well. It's a weird tactic where in response to force, they just fire into the air to be like, haha, we've got force too. So I presume that's what the Taliban guards around the whole place.
Assumedly, it's an intimidation tactic.
Yeah, but it also tells you that the Taliban are basically running the show, as anyone who's looking at this can
well, as we'll talk about later, the Biden administration has ceded the ground on this, and yes, they are running the show.
Yeah. So before the attack, a number of countries, including Germany, the Netherlands, and Canada, had announced that they would no longer conduct flights. Turkey has announced that its troops, who had been providing security at the airport for 6 years, were also withdrawing. So everyone else is basically just leaving. Right, it's terrorism time again, back to normal Afghanistan, where everything's just civil war 24/7. We're off. Which, as mentioned, ISIS had claimed responsibility. As you can see, the different flag from the Taliban one, black background, not white background. I want to make that clear for anyone who's working at the CIA. Apparently they don't know. Also, if we go to the next one, the weird thing about this is that the British ambassador went on to GB News to say that he'd never heard of Islamic State's affiliate group in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I hadn't. No one had.
So it's not just like people who shouldn't be in the know didn't know, but people who should be in the know. The ambassador was just like, I have no idea.
I mean, you can do a Google search, and before, literally a couple of days ago, it wasn't a phrase that had ever been mentioned on the internet.
So
where has this come from?
His quote is, "It never existed before." The argument, I imagine, it's from the Taliban who walked into the prisons and just freed everyone. And I mean, the Taliban's not one unified force. There are multiple factions, and therefore there's multiple factions of Islamists. In the same way you get with multiple factions of socialists. Yeah,
but the thing is, so very briefly, the only thing that we really know about these is the fact that they are deeply opposed to the Taliban. And this is what we hear from Western media. It's like, okay, but on what grounds? They're both Sunni groups. They're both terrorist groups. They both want to institute a very strict regime of the Sharia. They both want to kick the kuffars out of Afghanistan. On what grounds they opposed?
Yeah, it's like the Stalinists versus Leninists. It's like, Okay, no one but an autist can tell the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're very, very deeply into it, I imagine you can't really see any particular philosophical or ideological difference. But who cares?
Yeah.
Like these groups, like in Syria and Iraq, they're going to be incredibly porous. People are going to move from group to group very easily.
There's also the interesting point here, of course, that if we're starting back up with ISIS being in Afghanistan,
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned previously that we'd evacuated a whole bunch of people, and 6 of them turned out to be on a no-fly list.
Yep.
And one of them made him all the way to Birmingham before we found out, and he was described as a direct threat to the UK.
Brilliant.
And we'd imported him into Birmingham as a refugee. Yeah, this is getting worse and worse, because if we go to the next link here, Afghans are being evacuated with forged documents, according to the Telegraph. So Afghan evacuees have arrived at Heathrow in the past 48 hours with forged papers and no documentation, a border officer on the ground told the Telegraph. So not just no documentation, which could be expected because war zone, you have to run all the rest of it, the government doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But forged documents? Forged. Right, so that took some time to create.
Yeah, took some effort.
And why would you have to do that?
Good question.
Even when we've said you don't need to bring your passport. People are making forged documents. What's that about?
No idea.
I'm glad we've only
Dare not
imported
speculate.
1 terrorist, and 5 others are just in the system. God knows how many more are coming. And, we can look forward to Kabul, Heathrow. So, if we go to the next one, the Islamic Emirate has made a statement on this, because the Taliban are still on Twitter, and still
on Twitter.
favourite platform of choice. The mad mullah that runs Twitter, Jack Dorsey, is in full agreement with the Taliban's aims and objectives. So,
He did actually say they can use our platform as long as they don't break the rules. It's like, really?
as long as they don't misgender anyone, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. That's literally it. As long as they don't tell anyone not to overthrow the capital, that's fine. It's like...
It's absurd.
It's ridiculous. Absolute clown world.
The Taliban said in a statement, the Islamic Emirate strongly condemns the bombing of civilians at Kabul airport.
I mean, I guess they would, wouldn't they?
The bombing of
They've
civilians.
taken it over.
But I also love the bombing of civilians. People
Yeah.
love the Americans. I mean, who gives a toss? I mean,
Well,
they're the
yeah.
Taliban still. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So they condemned it. But then they went on a weird rant on their Twitter account. So we
Hang on, but let's just read the rest of this, right? The bomber struck shortly after noon in front of a US military base. The Islamic Emirate is very concerned about the security and protection of its people. The evil circles will be stopped in full force. So they are taking on the rhetoric and aspect of an actual government now.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they're trying to do.
They've been doing it for a
Yeah.
little while, actually. But their
very
subsequent
interesting.
tweets kind of crashed that.
Well, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, so we go to the next one. The Taliban claimed that the explosions were US troops destroying their own assets. But, like, if you're describing the civilians there as assets. So if the translation reads, Taliban spokesman, several explosions have been heard tonight in Kabul. They were controlled detonations carried out by US troops who were destroying their own assets at Kabul airport.
I wonder why they would say that.
I don't know. And they doubled down on this. This wasn't just like an F-up. If we go to the next one, they say explosions were heard inside Kabul airport after dinner today. What a time after dinner. Anyway, so these explosions were carried out by American forces to destroy their own equipment, so the citizens of Kabul need not worry. Right.
It's interesting how this is an attempt to get people to calm down.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the Taliban and you've just taken over, you don't want people running around chaotically, do you?
Yeah, but you can also see the weird rhetoric being like, yeah, we need to destroy the evil. Because a bunch of the Taliban died in this as well.
Well, that's, of course, how they think.
No, I mean a bunch of the Taliban died as in Taliban soldiers outside.
Yeah, but they think in terms of good and evil.
Sure. But the difference between them and ISIS, I don't know, it's just like, who cares, man? So Russia Today reporting here, Taliban claims that at least 28 of its own members were killed in the Kabul blast, vows to step up security, but no deadline on extension. So they're still saying to the Americans, get out by the 31st or else.
Right.
Or else what?
I can't believe that the Taliban security wasn't sufficient to protect from ISIS bombing.
There's also they're claiming 28 of their own members were there. Who knows? Probably true, though, considering that they do have a bunch of their guys just surrounding the airport.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've seen the footage of them literally just standing around in the crowd. So if a crowd gets bombed, then it's not surprising they'd get hit too.
Yeah, and the last thing here is that evacuation flights are apparently set back up again. So they're resuming to try and get people out. Which, so that's another day in Afghanistan. I mean, that's the thing. I know a lot of people have been saying for the last 18 months no American soldiers were killed, for example. That was because of the deal. The Americans, 18 months ago, started a negotiation with the Taliban. Therefore, for the subsequent 18 months, let's not kill the people we're negotiating with. So there's that. But back to normal, which is just, civil war territory. I mean, I saw some guy on GB News saying this, who'd served in Afghanistan, which is like, yeah, this is just normal days. This is not a big surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone.
No.
But now that there's all this attention on this, and because, of course, it is Biden's F-up,
Yes.
then worthy of the criticism.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it is normal that explosions and terrorism and that happen in Afghanistan, not at the point where the US has its last foothold, and I mean this whole thing was totally avoidable. None of this had to happen, and it seems to have been Joe Biden's knee-jerk response, because that's the feeling that I'm getting from watching all of this, is that none of this was very well planned, and Biden was, obviously his administration was like, oh yeah, well, this is all down to planned. It's like, this obviously isn't. This is obviously not planned. This is obviously chaos that's going on, and you have no idea what's going on. And for some reason, and this is why all the memes of Joe Biden's art of war do exactly the opposite of what Sun Tzu would recommend. Take the soldiers out first, and then let's hope the civilians can get along on their own.
Yeah, but also he's the one who pushed back the deadline. Everyone should have been out by May 1st, according to Trump's plan, and then he was just like, no, let's just extend it to September 11th. Why?
Yeah, why? Why September 11th?
He still hasn't said.
Again, it just seems strangely significant that you would choose September 11th.
Yeah, right? I don't know if it's the weird Democrat mindset. It was like, we went on for September 11th. I thought we're going out on September 11th, but
maybe.
Jesus Christ,
well, maybe. I mean, that's
I know, but from a foreign mindset, I'm looking at that being like, if Americans understand that, whatever. But for us, that just looks like, why would you do it on the anniversary?
I get the feeling that like Republican style Americans would view that as an insult.
I would.
Well, that's the point. That's the way I'm thinking, because you've got the Democrats who generally just kind of hate America. It wouldn't be surprising to me if they were trying to subtly insult the Republicans at the same time.
But yeah, I think
we don't know, obviously.
The bombs going off, normal. The 13 deaths can be placed on Biden because of the failure to enact his own plan, which was set up by Trump, as he says, to go up by May 1st, and instead he extended it for no given reason. It wasn't like the Americans were going to stay. The plan had been drawn now to leave, and it's his bungle. Thank you for watching this clip from the podcast The Lotus Eaters. If you want more from us, please go over to lotuseaters.com and subscribe to get access to all the premium content that we have on the site.
Yeah, we've got loads of really good stuff there. So we've been doing this for quite some time, so we've got a huge library of content in various different categories. Now, some of my favourites have been the book clubs. I'm personally a big fan of these because it means we get to read good books and important books, extract the useful information out of them, such as with this Roger Scruton's Where We Are, which is a very interesting conservative take on the current culture wars and the state of Britain at the moment. So we go through and explore the meaningful concepts. And here's one that you and Bo did with Frank Dicotta's Mao's Great Famine. It's absolutely brilliant and harrowing to read. And so when all the comments on this were happened to be, well, this was vile, we knew we'd done a good job with it. And we also have many other premium series like the Contemplations, where Hugo and Josh just go through and find something very interesting to talk about, such as this one talks about the idea of political representation and does it work, or is it a bit of a myth? And of course, we have the history content, which probably my personal favourite in this particular one. Myself and Bo talked about the achievements of Frankish warlord Charles Martel. Do you know what he's famous for, Callum?
Stopping the Muslims at Tours.
That's right. And we also do a bunch of premium videos and interviews and things like this. So in this one, we happen to have an interview with Michael Malice, who's a very, very charming guest, and I very much enjoyed this one. And we also do a bunch of premium podcasts about stuff that perhaps isn't appropriate for YouTube or various other platforms like that because of, some things outside of their editorial bounds.
So if you'd like to get access to all that premium content, please go over to lotuseaters.com and subscribe for as low as £5 a month. Thank you.